Hey guys, what's going on? Ace Alfal over here with FMO Media, CEO and founder. I have Brad and Jolene on the show. So I wanted them to really just explain, what they do, how they do it, and really just break down if you guys can possibly work with them in the future, right? So we're in quite possibly crazy times. Some people may consider it, but I want to get their thought process on where we are, the cycles that they've seen in the previous years that they've been working, and where they believe we're going. We know nobody has a crystal ball, of course. Well, before we go into all that, Brad and Jolene, why don't we just start real quick by what Home Loans is about, right, and what you guys are about?
Absolutely. So yes, we are the Brad Flanagan team, powered by Major Mortgage at the present time, and we're here to comprehensively serve our clients through strategic, financing, and then as well serve our real estate partners so that they can close more transactions and that they feel that they have a partner as opposed to just a service provider.
Got it. Very cool. Very cool. And Brad, how'd you get started in the business? I always love to hear that because most people don't roll out of bed and say, I want to write loans the rest of my life, so how'd that happen?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny enough too, because every time I talk to somebody on the phone, I said, I know you didn't wake up saying, I want to get a loan. You want a house and you just have to get a loan as a part of the process. So that is very true. I didn't know what financing truly was because it was 2005. I just got out of a war zone in Afghanistan, and my mom said, hey, you should be a loan officer. And I was like, okay, I'm used to taking orders. And she set me up with a broker. He was more holistic in his approach, said, you don't want to come work as a broker right out of the gate because all I'm going to do is sit you at a desk, give you a phone book. Back then, we didn't really have all the tech we have today. And so he connected me with a bank. Got to work for a mid-sized bank, and I feel like they gave me the foundation that helped me create a healthy business and actually serve clients. Now, I wasn't that in tune to all that back then, but looking back on it, that's what I realized. So having worked in title business through high school years and summers and such, that gave me a little bit more of a resume up. And then, of course, that like military preference, I think, got me in the door. And so from that point on, I just kind of grasped the numbers and really enjoyed the analysis and kind of consulting with the consumers.
Very cool. And Jolene, what's your role working with Brad?
I kind of partner directly with Brad and kind of just help him with anything and everything. He kind of gets the leads in the door, and then I kind of take it from there and take them through the pre-approval process and document gathering and making sure they're really comfortable with what comes next.
Got it. Very cool. And what's some things that maybe you see, Brad, happening in your market, some of the changes we've seen over the past maybe 12, 24 months? I know you're in a few different areas, right? So maybe specifically, home base versus other states. What do you kind of see happening right now versus what you were seeing a couple of months ago?
Yeah, I think, the real estate community is one of its own, right? So it doesn't have any geographic definitions, but that's been a little challenging for me because I think our industry is creating, or the economy is creating, a little more separation in our industry. And so things like which kind of loans should somebody accept when it comes to an offer, since they did start to get an abundance of offers. However, I started in Chicago, and that's still an area I serve today, which has always been maybe a little more challenging, a little more volatile. It's definitely more of an expensive market. I see younger first-time home buyers in Omaha, Nebraska than I do in Chicago, just because the barrier of entry. So over there, it might even be a little slower versus in Omaha, there's a significant amount of growth. Even Nebraska as a whole, we have two big cities, Nebraska and Omaha and Lincoln. And then they seem to continuously get closer. And so things like in Chicago, I see maybe some more opportunity in the rural areas because there's continued development, and because of the cost, they're trying to continue to move further away from the city. And then in Arizona, Phoenix market is where we've had some significant growth and help. That is a very transient place. People aren't certain kind of when they're going to go there and what they're going to do when they are there, but they're trying to prepare to move there. The houses that are desirable are still extremely competitive and very rapid appreciation. So it's exciting just to kind of see how it all is playing out. But I do like that there seems to be more education these days, as opposed to back in the 05, 6, 7, 8 time frame, where anybody could be a loan officer and anybody could get a loan. Now the guidelines are still strong, and they are protecting consumers as long as we make good decisions on the people that we're willing to help.
So let's talk about that, Brad, because a lot of people are coming out of their best year ever, right? Last year. So I think a lot of people may see their friend that was a loan officer pulling up on that new car, right? Maybe a few months ago, like, oh, that's what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, right? What maybe words of advice or wisdom do you have for those people starting year one, coming into the current market that we're in?
It's a tremendous advantage if they are coming into the market right now, because just like when I started in 05, 06, and I still was just trying to get my feet wet, when you learn under that adversity and where it's a little more challenging, you learn the right strategies, the right techniques, the right principles, versus coming in when it is strong. You're like, oh yeah, it's like fishing in a fully stocked pond, right?
Yeah.
So being conscious that you still need to provide a good quality service, you still need to value people and relationships and invest in them so that you can get the returns. That is still very critical. And I think for those of us that have experienced it, that doesn't really ever go away. It's just when you come into it, when it was kind of given to you and you almost take it for granted that you bought the cars and the bigger house and the fancy furniture to put into it, versus investing, which is just a very, very critical component, I would say, even of our team's success today. It doesn't matter. We've had people come in to to our group at fairly young ages, and they're very quickly turned to home ownership if they weren't. Some are even investors. And I think that actually adds to our proficiency and our value when we're working with consumers and partners.
And just to I want to dummy it down a little bit too, because I used to live in New York, right? And then I moved to North Carolina about a year ago, and I probably have had 30 of my friends and family move down here within the last year, right? So we have all these people who were renters, didn't think they would ever own a home, and now they're buying a house for the first time, and they don't know FHA, they don't know any of these terms that you guys know, right? You'll probably forget that most people ever know, right? Right, Brad?
Yeah.
So for people that are just totally uneducated, they're moving, from the bigger cities to maybe different parts of America. What are some of the platforms, and products that are just available? Maybe you can run through them and how some of them work. Just because a perfect example, I used to be in the military, and one of my buddies that had no idea about a VA loan. He served 8 years. It's like, how do you not know? It's kind of crazy, right? And he's like, wait, what? So
right.
Run through, just explain some the basics, they're just silly stuff, because you're just who doesn't know this? A lot of people, right? So maybe can you explain some of that? Because there may be somebody listening or watching this right now who has 15 grand saved up, has been working 2 years and thinks he needs 20% down or 50K to buy a house, who just knows nothing about nothing.
You got it. No, I'd love to. And that's actually part of our approach, is more so before I even open up a person's actual personal application and try to run through what's specific to them. It's first, hey, let's get a crash course in mortgage, because there is a lot out there. And if I just tell you what to get, it's more of that drive-through mentality versus kind of going to the fancy restaurant and actually being told what there is available to you. So with that said, you basically have two categories of loans: government loans and conventional loans. The conventional loans are the private side, and the government side are the kind of more boilerplate, one size fits all. And so under the government side, you've got USDA, FHA, and VA, which are all basically just different departments. USDA being the U.S. Department of Agriculture, FHA being the Federal Housing Administration, VA being Veterans Administration, all of which are governed by HUD, or the Housing and Urban Development. And so FHA is truly the one size fits all. Pretty much everybody can qualify for that if they meet certain criteria. and you all get the same terms. There's not an adjustment for credit score on mortgage insurance or really the interest rate. There are restrictions on the quality of the property and the condition of the property. And that's why agents sometimes advise their sellers against maybe one of those loans because they feel it might cause a little bit more concern. However, if we don't serve that community, there's going to be some disruption and somebody who's going to have to step in, like the government, and say, hey, we need to do something. And that's going to impact us overall as a market. USDA is meant for rural properties. And so there's income limitations, geographic limitations as to where that property can be. And then VA, veterans or qualified dependents. And that is USDA, VA, both are 100% financing. FHA requires 3.5% down. So $3,500 for every $100,000 worth of house you're buying.
And walk me through, Brad, what it's like to work with you and your team specifically, right? You know, like, how does that look? I reach out to you, and I maybe got to get pre-qualified, all that. I know the markets may be cooling off a little bit, but what's that look like? I listen to this and I want to reach out to you guys. What's it like working with you? What's the first thing I do? You know, like, walk me through what the relationship looks like between you, Jolene, and the rest of your team.
Absolutely. And so because we value people's time, we don't want to make them invest, hours up front. So it generally started with a quick conversation, either phone, Zoom, that kind of thing, just to answer some entry-level pre-qualification type questions, see if we're a good fit. I'm always all about personality matching. So I don't want to force somebody to do business with us just because it's an opportunity to do a loan. It's more so, hey, do you feel safe? Do you feel comfortable? Do you hang up and still have questions or feel like you didn't understand something? So trying to create a personal connection so that we can break down those walls and understand that I'm truly just a representative of you. All the information that I use to do my job is actually open and available to the general public. It's just very overwhelming. And there's so many different categories that you need somebody who focuses on it every day. And so that initial conversation will determine if there's some action items following. That's generally an online application. Shouldn't take anybody more than 5 minutes. I always tell everybody, you can't break it. So just give us your best answer to the questions you're being asked, especially if they're required, and we'll fix that stuff on the back end. And fortunately and unfortunately, technology is so ingrained into our process that I think most people have put the concerns of security on the back end over doing that online stuff, but it truly integrates us a little better and makes the process more smooth. So we don't divert you to just being online. I am actually anti real fast and online type of a process because it still requires that personal relationship. Anyways, once that's done, within 24 hours, we're back on the phone and we're going over very specific details and setting good expectations.
Very cool. And Jolene, how involved are you in this entire process? Why don't you walk me through like where you come in?
Pretty involved. I think we've gone from using the term kind of assistant to partner because it is kind of just like me and Brad. So very, very involved. Brad sets pretty good expectations up front that they're going to be hearing from me after they do the application. And I'm pretty much the one who runs through everything with them, with Brad there for support if I need it. But he kind of likes to be more on the front end, bringing things in, and then I kind of take it from an operations standpoint.
So you're Brad's muscle. You make sure things get done, right?
Pretty much.
The enforcer.
She is
yeah.
so critical to the experience and the process because ultimately my part can be looked at as easier. And so having that initial conversation is one thing, but then once the data starts coming in, it's in her hands. Sometimes it gets prepared for her by another person on our team, and then she knows the guidelines as well as I do, sometimes better nowadays.
Brad taught me everything I know.
And so what was great about Jolene is she just had no fear when we first started this partnership. And anytime I had a request for help, because as you know, Ace, if you do provide a good service, you do get busy. And I wasn't manager oriented at all. I didn't necessarily have a process. I said, Jolene, you shadow. And then she kind of replicated what I did a great job of observing, taking notes, and then taking on a task and just finding out how to do it on her own sometimes. And so through that, it just gave me more confidence to let her continue to take over certain obligations of mine, which allowed me to continue to do the things that maybe my time was best spent doing. And so I kind of say I steer the ship and she keeps it fueled and moving. So people will hear from her more than me, even once we've gotten past that initial meeting and then the follow-up, maybe consultation, because when it starts to get strategic, she tells me what their expectations are, gives me the data I need to prepare it. And then that's when we get on the phone again. Or just like yesterday, we had a challenging scenario where somebody has 3 different self-employments and some W-2 income and all these different types of characteristics that we have to consider from a loan perspective. And so then maybe I get in to help collaborate and see which strategies are best to use for them.
Makes sense. And what do we have this cameras off, right? What are you and Jolene talking about? I know the market, right, where we're at today. It's the stuff everybody's talking about. What are you talking to other loan officers about? Like, how high do you think, and nobody really knows, right? But in your opinion, how high do you think interest rates will go? When do you think the great reset is going to be? When do you think we're going to come back down? How low do you think it'll come back down? What's your opinion, right? It's all opinion, right? Because nobody really knows. But I always like to hear it from a lot of different people because everybody has a different perspective on what's going to happen. So what do you think, Brad?
Gosh. So like you said, nobody has a crystal ball, and I wish that we did. Oh my gosh. That would definitely give us a leg up. However, I do consider myself like an analyst and more of a strategic, introverted numbers guy. And I just see right now being the kind of that test run for what the future will be like, because honestly, back in 2009, which is when I really started to feel the best and the most comfortable, we were putting people in 6% loans. I was refinancing and purchasing at 6% rates, and it was very healthy. Granted, I was in the heart of the Midwest, and maybe they weren't as affected as other markets that I had been in. However, I think this is just a glimpse in the future, and then we're going to kind of go back somewhere in between where we are now and where we were, and then get the right pace of growth to get back to this point. So yes, this is hyperinflated and is something that our administration is going to have to probably put some effort into control. And then we're going to have some changes again, but I don't see them getting much higher before they start to turn around and kind of come back the other direction, which is where I think investors are as well, because when you look at our rate sheets, and for a good period of time, we weren't talking about buying points and buying your interest rate down. The reason that the rates are so challenging right now are because the investors are at least speculative that these are going to be short-term loans, right? These being 30-year fixed rate loans, we have what's called an early payoff, or basically a maturity to them, where investors start to actually make money up front. They don't make money, and that's why there's issues with loans being refinanced too fast. All the investors do, I think, anticipate these rates being refinanced, or these notes being refinanced, once the rates kind of come down after recessionary data comes in. So that's the conversations that I'm having is, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Borrower, don't invest in your loan to make it a good long-term decision based on today's characteristics, because that'll diminish the opportunity down the road to refinance into what would be a better long-term scenario. That being said, now is an opportunity to buy the houses with a little less competition than you were seeing before. And I can tell you, paying $10,000 over asking or over the appraised value is probably more detrimental than paying 1% more than you were hoping you'd have to pay, even if it is just a short period of time. So, and then marketing, I think, is where you actually invest your money right now as a professional, because you are most people are cutting back. The layoffs are rampant from our industry. And so you need to take advantage of this opportunity to double down, get in front of people, because it is going to come back, and it's going to come back pretty strong. Don't jump to greener pastures just because you think it's slow and it's a good time, because that might be the company that's not going to be there with the volume that you could potentially have 12 months from now when that refi boom does come around.
That literally, you read my mind with the next question was about marketing, right? So the marketing company, but and right, it's ballsy, right? Where most people may be like retracting, spend less. We don't know what's going to go on, right? Obviously, the smarter business owners like, well, now's a good time to double down, right? And get in front of people, right? Because, so it's still, scoop up all that business that nobody else is scooping up, right? So what is your all around thought process on marketing, where it was, where is it going, where we are today, how it's impacting, just the general landscape of the loan market as a whole? Why don't we just chat a little bit about that?
Yeah. Jolene can attest to my strategy before was just, how do I get in front of people face to face as often as possible? We were extremely consultative in the approach. I have, a general diagram or process that I follow once I was in the boardroom with somebody and I had my whiteboard. So it was a huge disruptor for me when COVID came around and everybody's on these Zoom calls and video conferencing. And so, as much as I didn't want to be in the tech or the virtual space, I know I have to be there. And so the amount of people that I see online, the age range, I just decided I really need to enhance my presence and meet people where they're at. And so I need to, I guess, if you look into like philanthropically or almost spiritually, how you serve people. I was challenged with that. I was like, how do I do that? What value do I have? Do I go back to the military type mindset that I have and go be security at the church? I'm not the guy that can direct traffic and parking lot or take care of the kids for sure. And so I actually did some soul searching. And I know this is a diversion, I apologize, but I was forced to see like, what value do I add above and beyond a paycheck, or just like, what talents do I have that actually serve a purpose in the world? And to me, that was finance. And so then I said, I'm going to serve through my work. Yes, I'm compensated for it, but so is a pastor at the end of the day. And so the way I can serve the most people is by getting in front of them. And that's what my goal is, I guess, is to expand my reach. Again, mostly virtually. The social media, I've seen so many people achieve some success through that. And so, working with FMO and trying to enhance my exposure is the number one goal right now, either video, print, or the digital ads and such is kind of the direction that I'm going.
Very cool. And what's some just words of advice you'd have, wrapping things up, Brad, for just, I don't know, buyers, sellers, people in the market, just like what's top of mind right now? What do you find yourself talking most about at the moment?
I like eliminating the noise. I always talk about whether it's a professional or a friend, a consumer, there's somebody always has an ulterior motive. The news outlet you listen to, the email that you're receiving, Credit Karma, for example. I hate to name a particular place, but that's something that a lot of people reference as, oh, my credit score is this and I have access to it. Well, it costs me $38 every time I want to get your credit score, and you're getting it for free somewhere. So something is amiss, right? I'm paying for something and you're not. And so the way that they're monetizing it is through advertising. And at that point, if they don't put something in the email to get you to open it, then they don't have the statistics to show their paid clients their success rate of opening the emails and such. And so protecting your mind and what you allow into it or what you pay attention to, find trusted people that actually give a crap about your future and where you're going. And then you're not going to be scared into doing what somebody else wants you to do. And so for that example is just today, people are scared to buy, and they think maybe the values are going to come down, but that's like saying that they expect the value of the dollar to go up. And unfortunately, since we're printing more of it, it's not as rare, it's not as valuable. So buying today is a better opportunity than waiting, regardless of rates and regardless of what the news is saying, because again, you can refinance your restructure your debt. And that's what kind of we're about, is analyzing the whole household. And then the other myth I think that's out there is that putting a bunch of money down is safe. And that's really not always the safest thing. Having equity doesn't do you any good other than give you something to look at and say, hey, my loan balance is this and my house value is this. So I technically have this, but show me how easy it is to get, because if times are tough, you can't go get it when you need it. So making sure that you're strategic in how you structure the debt is probably the other tip that I would share.
Love it. Love it. So, and you threw a lot at us today, Brad. So, I like it.
My meetings run a little bit long every day.
This is good, man. This is good. This is a lot of good content, a lot of good stuff to put out. I love it, man. So that's awesome.